Picture this, a Manhattan suite buzzing with stylists, assistants, and quiet tension. Meghan stands before the mirror, steadying her breath, calling it their return to glory. Across the room, Harry paces near the window, phone in hand, the city skyline glowing behind him. This was supposed to be the night that would prove the Sussex name still carried its weight, a symbol of power, grace, and lasting influence. The New York Humanitarian Awards were set to honor them for their charitable projects and public service work. Cameras would be flashing, headlines already written, every moment planned down to the minute. From wardrobe choices to security details, even the travel arrangements for how they'd arrive at the event. But before they could even head out, the call came. A voice from the committee, polite, measured, and absolute, delivered the news. The private jet they'd requested, fully funded by the event sponsors, was denied. No explanation, no compromise, just a quiet refusal that hit harder than expected. That won't be happening, the caller said, calm, sharp, and final. For a couple used to doors that always opened, that single no felt like a shockwave. Harry froze, Meghan stared. Because this wasn't really about travel, it was about validation. They weren't asking for luxury. Deep down, they were asking to still be seen as royalty. But this time, the world simply looked away. After that call from the New York committee, the room fell into silence. The tension was thick, the kind that says everything without a word. Harry's jaw tightened, his phone still in his hand. Meghan just stared ahead, not angry, not sad, just stunned. It wasn't about the jet anymore. It was about the message. The world had stopped bowing. For years, people had said yes to every request, every whim. But now someone finally said no, and that single word echoed louder than applause. For Meghan, rejection wasn't new, but this one cut deeper. It reopened a wound she'd carried since Paris, the week everyone remembers. It was supposed to be her comeback, her moment to remind the world that she still belonged on fashion's front row. Paris Fashion Week, Balenciaga, cameras flashing, diamonds catching the light. She walked in radiant, chin high, as if daring the whispers to fade. But something in the air felt wrong. The smiles were forced, the glances cold. Insiders whispered that her look wasn't gifted by the brand. It was borrowed. Tags still hanging like proof she wasn't part of the circle anymore. And in that world, borrowed doesn't mean stylish. It means you don't belong. Then came the story that changed everything. Late one night, Meghan's car reportedly drove through that tunnel, the very one where Princess Diana took her final breath. She later claimed she hadn't realized the route until afterward, but few believed it. To many, it felt deliberate, like she was tracing Diana's last journey through the Paris night. Photos from that evening told their own story. Flashes piercing the darkness, headlights glinting off the same curve that once silenced a princess. It didn't feel like tribute. It felt like imitation. By the time she left Paris, the applause had cooled. She arrived chasing rebirth, but left carrying comparison. That's why New York meant everything. The Humanitarian Awards weren't just another event. They were redemption. A chance to erase Paris, silence the whispers, and reclaim her place in the spotlight. Every detail was choreographed. The glam, the schedule, the route, the jet. Because this wasn't just another red carpet, it was an escape from humiliation. But when that call came, the one denying their flight and reopening old wounds, it didn't just sting. It confirmed what the world had already started to believe. The spell was fading, and this time, no one was pretending otherwise. On paper, the New York Humanitarian Awards was supposed to be about generosity, people changing lives, helping others, and giving without expecting anything in return. But behind the scenes, it didn't feel like that at all. It felt more like a Hollywood production than a charity event. Inside Harry and Meghan's team, every detail was treated like part of a brand campaign. Emails flew back and forth, checklists grew longer, and the demands kept coming. Lighting setups, temperature settings, even the labels on the water bottles, everything had to match the Sussex image perfectly. Then came the request that stopped the organizers in their tracks. Harry and Meghan's team suggested that their flight to New York be handled through sponsorship. In simple terms, they wanted someone else, a corporate sponsor, to pay for their private jet. Their explanation sounded polished and professional. They needed privacy, safety, and control. Flying commercial, they said, could create chaos, flashing cameras, fans crowding the airport, and unwanted scenes. To them, the jet wasn't luxury, it was protection. At least that's how they sold it. But not everyone saw it that way. The awards committee looked at the request and saw something different, a clear contradiction. This was an event meant to celebrate people who give without expecting reward, not celebrities asking others to fund their comfort. Behind closed doors, the decision was made quickly and quietly. No sponsorship, no exceptions. One insider summed it up with a line that spread quickly through the room. If you want to honor humanitarian work, start with humility. That quiet refusal became a turning point. What once looked like royal dignity now started to feel like privilege disguised as purpose. Even among New York's elite, the same people who once welcomed them with open arms, interest began to cool. The shine was still there, but the fascination was fading. For the first time, it seemed the weight of their title was heavier than its glow. The denial didn't go unanswered. Within hours, Harry's team started pushing back, and their argument centered on one word: safety. They claimed that after what happened in Paris, taking risks was simply not an option. They described scenes of chaos, photographers blocking the streets, flashes blinding the windshield, Meghan's car surrounded as she tried to leave the Balenciaga show. It sounded terrifying, but people who were actually there told a very different story. Witnesses said it hadn't been an ambush at all. It was organized, her route was public, and cameras had been tipped off in advance. It didn't look like danger, it looked like a performance. Some even said it seemed planned, a moment designed to recreate the same global frenzy that once followed Diana. And when that night ended with a drive through the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, the exact place where Princess Diana lost her life, many refused to believe it was just coincidence. Meghan claimed she hadn't realized where she was, but insiders quietly disagreed. They believed she knew exactly what she was doing, chasing not danger but the emotion and symbolism that came with it. That's why New York hit harder. This wasn't about privacy anymore. It was about control, the power to shape how the world saw them, frame by frame, headline by headline. When the awards committee rejected their request, it wasn't simply about saving money. It was about drawing a line, a quiet refusal to be part of a narrative they couldn't control. Behind the scenes, conversations turned serious. Organizers admitted that the Sussex name still brought attention, cameras, headlines, and global buzz, but it also brought controversy. The foundation's board had a choice to make: chase publicity or protect their integrity. For the first time, they chose distance over drama. When the request for a private jet finally reached the boardroom, the atmosphere changed instantly. It wasn't surprise, it was exhaustion. One executive reportedly leaned back and asked the question that ended the debate before it even started. If we pay for their flight, what message does that send to the people we're honoring? The ones who give without expecting anything. No one needed to answer. The silence said it all. The deal was off. Expenses were capped. The event would move forward, free from celebrity demands and quiet exceptions. To the public, none of this was visible. It looked like just another day of event planning. But behind the scenes, it felt like an earthquake. Inside the Sussex circle, panic started to spread. For the first time in years, their names alone couldn't bend the rules. No influence calls, no royal favors, just a calm, unshakable no. And that silence spoke louder than any statement. Whispers spread through PR circles before the press could even react. Phones rang, statements were drafted, and excuses began to form. Scheduling issue, miscommunication, anything to make the story sound harmless. But everyone involved knew the truth. This wasn't about logistics, it was about power, and the quiet reminder that even royalty can be told no. For years, Harry and Meghan had built their image on a fragile balance, royal grace mixed with Hollywood fame. But somewhere along the way, that balance broke. Now beneath the bright lights of New York, their image was beginning to quietly fall apart. There's something almost tragic about it. Harry left the royal world in search of freedom, yet he's still chasing something else: permission. Permission to be seen, to be admired, to still matter. And in the silence that followed, that might have been the hardest truth of all. In the end, it was never really about the plane. The denial hurt because it exposed something Harry had rarely faced in his life: being told no. For a man raised in a world where doors opened automatically, that kind of rejection felt personal. It wasn't about schedules or travel plans, it was about identity. Since leaving royal life, Harry has fought battles on every front, against the press, against institutions, even against the very system that once protected him. He calls it injustice, a punishment for choosing privacy. But his critics see something else. They say Harry never truly learned how to live without privilege. He gave up the crown, but not the belief that the world would still move around him. That's the quiet truth behind New York's refusal. It wasn't meant to humiliate, it was meant to humble. A reminder that status without respect doesn't mean much. So when the night of the awards finally came, there was no jet waiting, no royal escort clearing the streets. Just a single black SUV sliding through Manhattan traffic, blending into the city like everyone else. Inside, two people sat in silence, once the most photographed couple in the world, now realizing that the world had stopped waiting for them. Their names still open doors, but not as many. Their smiles still draw cameras, but not admiration, just curiosity. It's not anger anymore. It's indifference. The same silence that once protected them now surrounds them. The jet that never took off became a quiet symbol, proof of how fast privilege fades when humility is lost. For years, they've told their story, one of betrayal, courage, and battles fought in public. But the story people see now feels different. Quieter, lonelier, stripped of glamour and noise. Because when the applause fades and the world moves on, you're left with the only question that still matters. What do you stand for when no one's watching? And as this chapter closes, one truth remains. The Sussexes aren't running out of headlines. They're running out of grace. The jet stayed grounded, and maybe so did they.